Hey, this is David for Big Bits, and in this video we're going to take a look at the three big indicators that Nicholas Burton uses on his YouTube channel DataDash. And you can see I have a screenshot pulled up from one of his videos. He uses the squeeze momentum indicator by Lazy Bear, the MACD indicator, and the stochastic RSI. Now, these are all really good indicators to use. They really are. That's not necessarily financial advice, don't get me wrong, but when you look at the indicators, a lot of people just learn how to read the indicators and not really understand why they work the way they do. So for example, let's look at the squeeze momentum indicator on the chart here. You can see as price goes up, it turns green and continues to go up, and as price goes down, it trends downward. But why does it do that? And what are these gray and black squares or crosses here, excuse me? And I'm going to go into that in this video. So if you don't know how the squeeze momentum indicator works, you don't know how the MACD works or the stochastic RSI works, you're going to learn. So stick around for the rest of the video. I'm going to close this out now, or minimize it, and get that out of our way. And let's take a look at the chart. I've pulled up the weekly chart, kind of similar to what we had shown earlier in the image. So the first one we're going to take a look at is the MACD. Now I have all of the indicators pulled up, but let's maximize this. And we actually want to take a look at the source code for it so that I can tell you what it is. Now, just by looking at this before we actually get into the source code, I can kind of tell you some of the things that are going on here. The blue line is your actual MACD line, which is your calculated line that we're really using. The orange line here is what's referred to as the signal line sometimes, and that is an average of the actual MACD line. We'll get into that in a bit. And the green and the red bars are what's referred to as the histogram, which is the difference between these two lines. So we'll talk a bit about that as we look at the actual code for it. Now, I'm pulling this up here. The text might be kind of small if you're watching on a phone, but if you listen along, you'll get the key idea of what the indicator is actually doing here. Now, when you look at the indicator, you'll notice it actually has several parameters, and on DataDash, on the channel, he uses the defaults on all of the indicators, and that's what we're going to do here. The 12, 26, close, and 9. The 12 and 26, these are two different moving averages that we have to calculate based on those periods. There is a fast, which is the 12, and there is a slow moving average, which is 26. Now, by default, these use the exponential moving average function. So we're getting the exponential moving average of a 12 period and 26 period moving average, both of them exponential. And then what we do to calculate the MACD, which is the blue line, is we just subtract the fast moving we subtract the slow moving average from the fast moving average, and that gives us this line. So when you're looking at the price and you notice that things are going up, you have an idea of where your moving averages might be on the chart. So you would expect that your fast moving average moves up quickly and your slower moving average moves up somewhat slower. Now, since you're subtracting these, you're getting a difference that can go up and down below zero. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're looking at this. That's why the numbers go up and down below zeros, because when you subtract, if the slower moving average was greater than the fast moving average, the MACD would be negative, and that's why it goes below zero. Now, the signal line is essentially just the same thing as calculating the exponential moving average for the actual price of Bitcoin or whatever chart you're looking at. And that line, it's just the average of this blue line. That's really all it is, and it's an exponential moving average. If you don't know what an exponential moving average is, it basically weights the price of the most recent candles more heavily than those before it. So that's kind of how that works, and I've already explained somewhat how these bars work, and these are the histogram. You can tell just by looking at it, there's a large difference between the MACD line and the signal line here. So it produces a very large bar equal to that value, that difference between those. Okay, and you can see it's kind of styled up nicely so that if it's greater than it was before, it's this darker green color, and if it's reducing in size, if that divergence between those two lines is decreasing, getting smaller, it's a lighter green. And the same thing goes once it's below zero. If it's increasing while it's below zero, or decreasing, depending on how you look at it, it's going to get darker red, and if it's coming back up, it's going to be this lighter red. So that's all the MACD is. It's really quite simple, but it's a very commonly used indicator. It's a good idea to get a perspective on what the momentum is for the chart. And honestly, it's very good. If you look at it here, you can see it followed very well with the price action, and then back down here as well. It's a very common indicator, like I said. Now, let's move on to the other indicator that is fairly common, is the stochastic RSI. It has several different default values, and I'm going to get the source code out of the way in just a moment. Let's take a look at this one. You can tell it goes up and down, and the maximum value of it here is 100. You can see it flat lines up here. That's because it does have a cap of 100, and it has a minimum value of 0, and it touches that sometimes here on this chart. And then there's also some key levels that are highlighted on the chart for this particular indicator. Now, I'm not going to be able to open up the source code for that one here, but we're going to actually take a look at the calculation that TradingView provides in their wiki. Now, if you don't know what the RSI is, it is the Relative Strength Index. It's another indicator with its own calculation, and essentially what it is doing, it is looking at the strength. So the more green candles you have, the higher it'll be on the chart. And it too also ranges from 0 to 100. This is what they kind of call an oscillator. It oscillates between 0 and 100. And we are going to use the stochastic calculation on the RSI value. Now, there is a stochastic indicator that uses the price of the whatever you're looking at, whatever the candles are, it uses that price. So if you replace the RSI here with the close, and your lowest low and your highest high and your lowest low appropriately with the prices on the chart, that would be your stochastic. Now, all we're doing here is we're replacing the stochastic with the RSI, or the close, excuse me, with the RSI with that same stochastic calculation, and we're getting what's known as the stochastic RSI. And you can tell there are some pretty good notes here. When it's all the way at 100, then the RSI, it's at its highest level in 14 days. Now, I do feel like I need to show the RSI here as well, so let me pull up that indicator. Okay, let's compare these two together here. Let me move this over so you can actually see it. We can see our RSI was increasing, and the stochastic RSI maxed out here at 100 while our RSI was still going up, and it continued to go up. That's because the RSI was continually hitting higher highs. And when you look at the stochastic RSI, when it's at 100 or 1, it's at its highest level. And the default values that we were working with the stochastic RSI, those are just the different look back periods that we're actually using here. Now, give me just a moment. Let me pull up those settings. And I should point out, I can't remember which one of these lines is K and D. I believe the K is the blue and the D is the orange, but we have our stochastic period and our RSI length. What we're doing with the RSI length is we're calculating the RSI based on that many candles back, and then we're also, after we do that, then we are calculating the stochastic RSI based on the last 14 entries of the RSI. Now let me go back here. So when we calculate the RSI, This value here at the very end is calculated from 14 candles back. All of that data from 14 candles back and on, that's what it's calculated based off of. Now, when we're doing our stochastic RSI, the stochastic RSI is looking at the last 14 periods of the RSI instead of the actual price. So it has to know the previous values of the RSI before it can calculate the stochastic calculation for the RSI. And that's just common sense. You have to actually have the values to be able to calculate the indicator. But now you kind of have a pretty good idea of what's going on, what the RSI is, what the stochastic RSI is. Then we have one indicator left, and that is the squeeze momentum. Let's take a look at this one. As I might have discussed earlier, when the price goes up, it seems to show momentum going up on this, and then it comes down, goes below zero. Similar to the MACD, it goes up above, below zero, and it sort of shows you the momentum of the price. Now, it also shows you when there is a squeeze on price. The black crosses show a squeeze, the gray crosses show that there isn't a squeeze on prices. And I'll show you how all that works in just a moment. Let's see if there was anything else I want to show you right now. Not quite, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up this chart because that's going to be coming up next. Let's take a look. This is a squeeze momentum indicator that is being used. It's created by Lazy Bear, and he's done a very good job on the indicator. And it's one of the very, very popular indicators on here, but we can see by the inputs that he's using that we are using a Bollinger Band and a Keltner channel indicator in order to calculate the values here. So the first thing he does is he calculates the Bollinger Band, and I'm actually not sure if this is a bug or not, but he uses the multiplier for the Keltner channels here, which defaults to 1.5, but the Bollinger Band mult value is 2.0. So if you're using this and you're using the input for the Bollinger Band mult, then it might not be doing anything. So keep that in mind for now. I've already sent him a message, or whoever that account is ran by, I've already sent them a message to ask them about that, because that doesn't seem right to me. But going forward, anyway, that's how you calculate the Bollinger Bands. This is a range, essentially, of prices. You get a moving average as your basis, and then you calculate a standard deviation, and you look to see what prices are within that standard deviation based on the moving average. And I can actually show you that. I've already got it pulled up. These are the Bollinger Bands, and I've already changed it to 1.5 to match what I believe is the bug in that script. And you can see there's a moving average. It's a simple moving average of 20. And then there's a standard deviation, which essentially means the more volatile the price is, upwards or downwards in a given time, the larger the deviation is away from the center. So you can see the bands get really wide when there's a lot of price up and down on the chart. Within that 20 periods back on the chart, it got very wide, and you can see as the price narrowed and there wasn't nearly as much volatility, the bands got much tighter, and that's kind of what they refer to as the bands being squeezed when you're talking about Bollinger Bands. Now, that is not the only pair of bands we are looking at. But before I get on to the other bands that we're looking at, I want you to note that the middle band can be referred to as the middle band or the basis, and this band is the upper band and the lower band, and that should make sense. It's pretty straightforward. The other bands we're looking at are actually Keltner channels, and these are calculated similarly to the Bollinger Bands. And let's go back to the squeeze momentum indicator. I can show you that. We also start with a basis using a simple moving average, but then we calculate a range, and this is known as the true range, and it's based on the actual range of the candles. Instead of just using the standard deviation, it's using the range of price on the candles. You can either use true range or it will default to that calculation. Now, once we have that, it does some more math, and then it comes up with the bands based on the Keltner channels. This isn't a Keltner channel indicator specifically, so I'm not going to get too much into the details on that. But you can see this calculates the Keltner channels, which are similar to the Bollinger Bands, and they have their own bands on here. Now, what's being done with the squeeze momentum indicator is there's a little bit more work done to create the actual value that you see on the bars, which, let's go back to the squeeze momentum indicator. So to calculate these values that are in the bars, the green or the red values, this calculation is created. We're getting the average of the highest high in the Keltner channel length backwards and the lowest low of the Keltner channel period going backwards. Once we have that, then we average that in with a simple moving average, the current value for the simple moving average of the Keltner channel length, and that's actually just the middle band of the Keltner channel since they're both using the close. Then we do a linear regression using the source, which is just the close. You can see he defined that here, the close price in the candle. Subtract that from that, and the linear regression using the length of the Keltner channels and 0. Now, that's how we come up with the bars. Pretty simple math, huh? I don't fully understand it, but we are taking some average here. We take our highest high and our lowest low. Okay. We average that in with a simple moving average. So these, the highest high and the lowest low, could either be well above or well below the Keltner channels or the Bollinger Bands, but we're averaging those together, so that should be fairly close to the middle bands on either the Bollinger Band or the Keltner channel. Then we average that in with the actual middle band of the Keltner channel, so now they're even closer to it, and then we get a linear regression using that information, taking the current price minus that, and it creates that value, and it is some distance off of wherever that calculated value is from the current price, which creates this bar down here. But you're probably also wondering how the squeeze actually works. Now, to calculate whether something is a squeeze, excuse me, there are a few things we have to look at. First, we have to see if the value is above 0. If it is above 0, then oh, this is actually doing the colors on the chart, excuse me, but this essentially tells it whether it's the bright green or the regular green. But for us to be able to tell whether something is being squeezed or not, we actually have to come up here. My apologies about that. The squeeze is on, which essentially means we have a black cross on that indicator. If the lower Bollinger Band is above the lower Keltner channel and the upper Bollinger Band is below the upper Keltner channel. What that means is both of the Bollinger Bands are within the Keltner channel, which means they are smaller than it. Let's see if we can actually get that to show up on the chart here. So, for example, let's zoom in on the chart here. Let's go ahead and remove the MACD and the stochastic RSI because we're done with those. Bring that over here. You can see the Bollinger Bands, which are this color, narrow, and they go well within the Keltner channels, which are this brighter blue. And you can see the black crosses here indicate that it is being squeezed. And then once they burst out, you can see that they are no longer being squeezed, indicated by the gray crosses here. So if you're wondering how that indicator works, that's how it works. It calculates its value based on the math that it uses. We went over that. And then it also looks at these bands to tell whether or not the price is currently being squeezed, and you might be able to anticipate a large move. So There you go. We've went over all of the indicators used in the DataDash YouTube channel, and I thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like. Definitely subscribe if you want to see videos like this. I have a tutorial series on how to develop indicators in Pine on TradingView. So if you want to learn how to make your own indicators, check that video series out. And excuse me, I have something caught in my throat. I'm really sorry about that. Just a moment. I almost made it through the whole video without coughing. I apologize. But if you've learned something from this video, please check out that series because you can learn a lot, especially if you're interested in development and you're interested in trading and charts. You can learn a lot from that one on how to create your own indicators like this, or be something incredibly different all on your own. For example, I created several of my own indicators. Let's go to my scripts here. Let's look at the smoothed RSI. As this is loading in, this is something I created from scratch, just based off of the plain RSI calculation. You can see there's a lot going on here, so you can get really in depth, and you can even create your own strategies that show when you should get in and out of the chart. So definitely check out that series if you can. Subscribe to the channel, please. Thank you, and have a great day. Hey, I almost forgot to mention, please also check out my profile on TradingView where you can actually see all these scripts I'm talking about in that tutorial series and the ideas that I've posted on TradingView as well. You can check out. Starting to get a lot of followers and likes on the things that we've done here. So check that out too if you're interested. And have a great day again.